Rich, hello, mate. It's been a few years since we had you on. We are just saying then you were the most viewed video for a long time when we're discussing about ITAM and FinOps. You're still in the top 10. You're in the top 10, but I understand you want to make a comeback. You want to get back into that number one spot. So, how the devil are you? How have you been for the past 2 years it's been since we last spoke on here?
Yeah, I'm good. I've been busy. I think that probably sums it up for most people. So yeah, apparently it's 2022 that we
Yeah.
last recorded. So plenty's gone on. Probably the biggest thing is moving jobs. That was what's that now? So that's kind of 9-10 months ago. So that was a big change moving across to Siniega. But still doing all the bits that I love. So the webinars, the presenting, Microsoft licensing, training. So yeah, I mean Microsoft absolutely keeping me busy. They've been, you might have noticed, they've been up to one or two things over the last few years. So it's one of those kind of more of the same, but also everything's different. FinOps is a bigger thing even than it was last time we spoke. Microsoft are up to all sorts. So yeah, keeping busy.
You're keeping bit. And how are you finding the new role at Siniega? I mean, like I said, whenever I speak to anyone from Siniega, you guys are playing like football manager in the ITAM world in terms of the talent recruitment. It must be epic to work with so many people that you know anyway from the ITAM industry, all working for the same company now.
Yeah, it is a proper kind of Power Rangers slash Voltron, depending on people's age. That kind of putting everything together, and forming a really big, strong team. And yeah, it's great. We've got some really good people on the delivery side, ITAM, FinOps, GreenOps, business development, all sorts. So it's really good. And the kind of messaging around ITAM, FinOps, GreenOps all coming together. I've been sort of banging on about that for years. Siniega as well. So it's all coming together, keeping me busy, and I'm getting to do more things sort of directly with customers, so kind of helping organisations. Because obviously, previously at ITAM Review, it was I'd kind of tell people about stuff, and then it was up to them to sort it
Yeah.
out. So now having that ability to work with organisations, I'm enjoying being back in that space as well.
Getting your hands dirty again, going through those Excel spreadsheets to find compliance risks or optimization opportunities, getting right back in there with that shovel, getting in the mud. Nice, mate. Yeah, you guys are definitely doing fantasy football with the ITAM world, and it's awesome to see because I think it's refreshing. There hasn't been, it's been a very much the same, big houses that do, managed service providers, all that kind of stuff for a long time. So it's great to see a disruptor going in, and Tony's a ledge. What a nice guy. So it's good to see you guys expanding on that one. But you mentioned since we last spoke, obviously Microsoft have been keeping you exceedingly busy. Um, so talk us through some of the changes, Rich, that are giving customers a headache, but also giving you a lot of work to be doing.
Oh, right. So here we go.
Yeah, the deep breath says it all. Yeah, strap in, everyone.
Yeah, I mean, the difficulty is trying to remember. Over the last 2-3 years, so much has gone on. I think the current things. So there's a sort of joint problem of there have been loads of price increases over the last couple of years. So Microsoft 365, Dynamics 365, SQL Server, Windows Server, System Center, Power BI, Teams calling, these have all gone up or will be going up by April 1st, 2025. So for organisations, even if you've stayed perfectly flat, you've not added any people, you've not bought any new products, you're looking at kind of 20 to 30% more than last time on average. Couple that with the fact Microsoft have also decided that they don't really like discounting as much as they used to. So average discount has probably dropped by about 50% on enterprise agreements and stuff. So if, last time you were paying, £1 million and you were getting a 20% discount, now you're going to be paying 1.3 million and getting a 10% discount just, off the bat. So
Ouch.
it makes, asset management even more important, because that optimization, if your pricing's going up, reducing the number of excess licenses, etc., is an obvious place to start. But on top of that, they've got all these new products. They've invented AI. As Microsoft would have you believe, maybe that it's their idea. But OpenAI, in Azure, Copilot, Microsoft 365 Copilot, Copilot for Azure, for security, for Fabric. There's so many Copilots. They've spent so much money. They need to make it back from somewhere, and the obvious location would be customers. So that's a big thing. It's being worked into products as a reason to then increase the price. It on a personal Microsoft 365 side. So you've got Microsoft 365 personal, family, etc. They've switched that to now include Copilot. So the price has gone up by 41%, I think, and that's kind of on an individual basis. But it's a similar thing that they're doing in the business side, where products which have worked perfectly well, now they've got AI features, so you've got to pay more for it, whether you want them or not. And to be honest, it's not just Microsoft doing that. Salesforce and Oracle and everyone, but Microsoft are probably where most people will see it. And then I think the other big one is there's a real move towards pay-as-you-go billing and consumption billing. So Microsoft has always been relatively straightforward in that, on your servers you would say, right, we've got this number of servers or processors or cores. For your users, you'd say, right, we've got this number of users. And obviously there are intricacies, but you could forecast relatively well and say, right, we've got 20,000 users, so we're going to need 20,000 of these, 8,000 of those. But now, so many things are done based on consumption of different types of storage or API calls or AI credits or There's no way that you can sit down as a business and say, right, how many API calls are we going to make over the next 3 years, or how many in Microsoft Fabric, which is one of my pet projects at the minute, is I'm building a training deck around Microsoft Fabric, which is the successor to Power BI Premium Capacity. So it's all kind of Azure-based data analytics. I'm on about 55 slides now, just for the one product.
Wow.
And going through that, it kind of shows. So, for example, one of the things that Microsoft show is if you transfer a terabyte of data in one way, it will cost like 20 cents an hour. If you do it in a different way, using a kind of a staging model, it will cost about $13 an hour. So, massive price difference, and it all depends on how you use the product. So when you're, an asset management team, procurement team, and you're trying to forecast, right, how much are we going to spend on Microsoft Fabric in the next year or 3 years, it's almost literally a guess, because even if you have the relationship with the solution architects and the data analysts, etc., they're probably not going to know how many terabytes of data they're going to move or how many pipelines they're going to create. So it becomes much more of a, right, we'll get the bill at the end of the year and we'll find out and then we'll pay, and then maybe you can optimize a little bit going forwards. But the ability to forecast is becoming much more difficult, and I think that's intentional. Pay as you go models, you can do that for Power Platform, Windows Server and SQL Server if you use Azure Arc, Fabric, SharePoint Syntax, a bunch of other things, Copilot Studio. So more and more across the boards, and it looks easier because you don't have to invest up front. You just pay a little bit and you use a little bit, and it's brilliant. But then, as we all know, almost every time any company uses a little bit of software, it becomes a lot of software very quickly. So that's a real big one, I think, for Microsoft, that for companies, for asset managers, it's a real change in how do you predict your spend, how do you monitor it, how do you optimize it. It's quite a big shift.
So, Rich, you mentioned there about it's not just Microsoft, but the global climate at the moment is a lot of organisations are streamlining headcounts. We're seeing reduced budgets for hardware and software. Surely software vendors understand this, but then at the same time, they've kind of got you by the shorts and curlies, right? So if you're a Microsoft house, you're going to kind of have to just put up and shut up with the price increases, right? Because moving away from that is going to be a lot more pain than paying an extra or having less discount, etc. But it just, in my head, it really... I get the investment in AI. I get the investment in AI. I get why prices are increasing, but come on, look at the global economy, man. Everything's increasing. Organisations don't have any money at the moment.
Completely agree. Vendors always seem to put their prices up at the what we would consider to be the worst times. But unfortunately, I think a lot of it is driven by the AI buzz. Because all of a sudden companies have found a bunch of money to start using AI and things. So I think the vendors have kind of gone, well, do you know what? If there's money around for that, then there's money around for these other things to get more expensive, especially if we say it's because of AI, then it all kind of loops together. But yeah, I agree. An inflation over the last couple of years has been a huge increase on pricing anyway. So it does feel like just everyone piling on at the same time.
Yeah, a big kick in the you-know-whats is like, you get your budget for the next year, it's decreased, you get and like you said, a load of software vendors, even the smaller ones, when you're doing renewals, are going, no, we can't match the discount that we had last year. So you end up paying more in some cases, but less licenses than you had last year because they've increased their prices, they're not doing their budgeting. You've got the budget holders, aka like the clients that I work with, going, well, no, it cost us $35,000 last year. Why is it now costing us $37,000 and a bit when we've reduced licenses? You explain why, and they just turn around and go, well, I physically haven't been given that budget. So then it's like, I don't know what you do then. If you physically haven't been given the budget for all the license, we're running as lean as we physically can. You're going to have to go beg, borrow and steal for extra money, and then there's the whole justification behind it. Then there's the argue with the software vendor, and it really does feel at the moment, especially with some of the organisations where ITAM has been bought in to streamline and save money, that then these price rises are just a massive kick. And I'm going to move, obviously we're going to talk about software, but just to quickly touch on the hardware side of things as well. The price increases on hardware and a certain president in America that might be implementing some tariffs that are just going to make hardware even more expensive coming out of the US. And we've got the Chinese government implementing sanctions as well, which is also increasing prices. It's just like one thing after another. Is like just hit after hit after hit after. Oh, but then again, like you said, Rich, this is where we can shine, right? This is where we can do our best to shine, but again, it gets to a certain point when you've optimized as much as you can, and that's it, I'm afraid. We can't do any more.
Well, yeah, and I think as well, what we're finding, it's that sort of understanding that it's not necessarily, and it's an age-old conversation, cost savings versus cost avoidance, and
Yeah.
but it's kind of like with pricing going up, you can do your absolute best, that literally perfect optimization, but it might still cost more than last time. However, it costs a lot less than it would have done
Yeah.
had you not done it. And it's trying to get businesses to realise that, yeah, it's gone up by 100 grand, but without you, it would have gone up by 500 grand. And
Yeah. Do you know see? I feel like that's almost as where there's been a shift in the last few years as well, where cost avoidance was something that again it was great. Look at what items managed to avoid by being proactive and doing this. Whereas now, it's gone from that's great, that's lovely and everything, and we're really glad that you've managed to avoid X amount on this renewal, but our budget is our budget. You need to be doing cash savings, not cost avoidances. And like you said, it's really hard getting to that point at the moment. I'm finding, especially with kind of smaller organisations, like 15,000 seats and less, that every dollar, every euro, every pound seems to be really mattering at the moment. And it's almost like they're going, okay, well, if this renewal is going to cost us X amount more over here, we're going to have to take it from this one here. So you're going to have to get even more off this software vendor. Or you're going to have to reduce your hardware refresh count by 20 laptops because we're going to need that money to go over. Do you know what I mean? It feels like there's a lot more of a pressure on ITAM in getting that cash saving, and cost avoidances have gone from being brilliant. Look at what ITAM have managed to avoid us spending to lovely, but we got the budget.
yeah, no, I completely agree. But ironically, it's kind of now is probably when cost avoidance is probably the best outcome.
The biggest,
in a lot of scenarios. And there is a bit of me that wonders, whether there's a kind of a longer term plan from some of the software publishers. Now they're all talking about AI agents and that can do things autonomously and da 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 da. There's a bit of me that wonders whether long term the plan is to say, look, your budgets are constrained, etc. If you buy this AI product, make some agents, then you can get rid of 40% of your call center or those customer service agents. So then all of a sudden, because probably the only bigger expense than software and IT is wages in a company. So I wonder whether they're positioning it to say, look, get rid of that 40%, move that money to us. You're spending less overall as a business, so you're better off, but it means more money is going to them. And I think that, I think that's probably on some of their agendas. I think it's in most cases probably a bad idea. I think AI is best when it's helping humans.
Yeah, agreed.
Not replacing. But I do wonder because I always picture within Microsoft, Oracle, Salesforce, etc. They've got a room that's got like a 10-year plan stuck up on the wall, and taking them up to like 2035, and I think that's probably part of it that they're seeing this budget crunch as a positive almost for them long term. We shall see. If it
goes back to that conversation we had earlier about footballers earning too much money, the software vendors are earning too much money. Stop taking people's jobs. AI.
There is a real kind of this kind of capitalist thing of all these companies have to keep getting bigger and earning more and returning more shareholder value and stuff. And sometimes you do kind of think, well, maybe everything's as big as it needs to be. From a kind of evolutionary perspective, animals, they get to a certain size and then they stop. Elephants are as big as they are because if they got any bigger, it would cause problems. And I think and I'm sure, there are reasons and people people who study economic theory will be like, what are you on about? But I do think there comes a point where businesses are big enough, and if it starts causing job losses, etc., then as a society, maybe that's not the right way forward anymore.
Yeah, I think it's I mean, yeah, they want to make money. Everyone wants to make money, but again, you kind of just like have a bit of sensitivity. I know they're never going to have any sensitivity to what's going on in the world because they're purely money, money, money kind of thing. But I think it's an interesting point you mentioned about the maybe the long term future is looking at things like that, because then we heard years ago that software as a service and subscription was going to be the death of Sam, and then we kind of evolved into ITAM and took on working with FinOps and working with artificial intelligence, and how ITAM needs to have a big say in getting organizations AI ready on the data set side of things. But then is it going to be a case where software vendors going, well, actually, these AI agents can also show you all of your, we're going to automate ITAM for you. It doesn't matter. We're not even going to ask you. We currently implement those controls ourselves with, process diagrams, workshops, implementation. They could turn around and go, doesn't matter. Don't worry about it. It's not being used for a set amount of time. We're just going to get the license back for you anyway. And we're going to show you how our AI has done all the cost savings and cost avoidance and stuff for you. But like you said, it will still need humans to support that, right, Rich? Right?
Yeah, I completely agree. I think I remember a story from a few years ago, and I can't find where the source of it anymore. So I'm always a little bit reluctant to share it because I don't want to kind of spread fake news. But I do, whether it was true or whether it's just a good example. There was a thing of a company who were using AI to look after their HR process, and kind of when people were fired, it automatically revoked their key card, shut down the payment system, and then there was someone, for some reason, it decided that they'd been fired when they hadn't. So it cancelled their key card, deleted their user account, came in the next day, what's going on? They worked it out, they fixed it, but then at the end of the day the system was like, nope, they've been fired, shut it all down again. And no one could work out how to stop it. And it just did it every day. And that was one unfortunate individual. But if you kind of extrapolate that out, the ability for something like that to happen that people then can't fix is potentially catastrophic. So I think it always needs to be human led, and if you can use AI to analyze a petabyte of data in 5 minutes instead of 6 months, brilliant. But still have a human. What has it done? There are some of the things, with asset management where, you look at the data and you think, there are 3 lots of software there, they've triple purchased. But actually, you can see, well, that was probably, the initial purchase, then maybe that was the renewal, but it wasn't tagged correctly. And in actual fact, this is how many they've got. Whether I think we're a long way from an AI being able to do that kind of thing, because it's all about data quality, and one of the things that humans are really good at is making sense of rubbish data. So I think absolutely as a tool, I use AI for certain things, and it's great. It's absolutely awful at other things, and I do think. The Gartner hype cycle, and we're very much at that kind of peak of inflated expectation, and I think we will, as a global society, fall into a massive trough of disillusionment with AI in the next year or so, where the AI, they've been working on it since the 50s, and it's not. It's not as groundbreaking in some ways. It's got 70 years of research and development behind it to get to this point. So you think, will it be doing what they say it's going to do in 12 months, 18 months? I don't think it will. I'm surprisingly sceptical about it, but I was very sceptical about blockchain and how it was going to revolutionise ITAM, and I feel like that one paid off because
Yeah.
I'm still to see it happen. So I think AI, it's got its place, and it will help a lot of people. But yeah, I think the software publishers at the minute are really kind of, rinsing AI. They're spending a lot of money on it. They're getting customers to spend a lot of money in turn. I think it will settle down over the next few years. And yes, people will buy AI, but they won't buy anywhere as much of it as the publishers want them to, I don't think.
Yeah, your story reminds me. I can't remember whether it was you that recommended the book, but someone I was talking to in the ITAM world, before I went on holiday, recommended this AI book, about all the problems that it had, and kind of like case studies like the one you mentioned about HR. And there was one in America where one of the states used it to track patients that had been admitted to hospital with asthma. So they were, doctors were using it and going, oh, well, people of this demographic, this gender, this race, 2% likely to need hospital admission through asthma. Therefore, off you go, take these tablets or, have this medicine or whatever. But what AI hadn't taken into account were things like physically being able to get to see the doctor in the first place, health insurance to actually be admitted to hospital, all these other factors around it that made the informed decision. So these doctors were going off really bad data and going, well, you've got a really bad case of asthma, but it's not likely according to this that you're going to need hospital admission, so take this and off you go. And actually it caused way more problems because doctors were sending people that did need hospital admission away because the AI was just completely missing so many different variables that could have happened, and it caused them way more problem than it worth, and they got rid of it and just led it back to the doctors using their own however many years of medical training that they need to go through to identify whether this person does need to be admitted to hospital for asthma. But yeah, there's so many stories about how AI just gets things really badly wrong in some cases. So I fully agree that it's really exciting from an ITAM point of view and a world point of view, but is it going to be as, iRobot as a lot of people are saying? Probably not. And, you see all these headlines, Rich, as well, right? Even family members have no interest in IT, all of that stuff. They see things where Elon Musk is saying that the world must come together and set parameters around AI because it's going to take over the world and it's going to be used to create war and all of this kind of stuff. And they're going, oh my God, like AI is the end. It's like, not quite.
Yeah, it's There's a lot of hype about it, and I think I mean it'd be interesting. Maybe in 5 years, when the AI is taken over, we'll really regret it.
Yeah.
Who knows? But
Rich, we won't be here if AI is taken over in 5 years' time. It has already found us for these comments, mate. We're gone.
True. But yeah, I think when you look back over time. There are so many things which were supposed to be the best thing ever or the worst thing ever, and actually they ended up being kind of all right. Some in the middle, and I think ultimately that's where AI will be. I've used this example before, but like when cars were invented, and it was going to be for some people the best thing in the world. They were going to solve all these problems. For other people, it was going to be terrible. Obviously there were job losses from the kind of horse industry, and it was going to cause these problems. Ultimately, I don't think it's as good as the car manufacturers made it out to be. I don't think it's as bad as the worst, sort of enemies of cars made it out to be. There are good things about cars, bad things about cars, and you can substitute almost any technology, I think, for cars in that statement, and I think that will be AI. There'll be good things, there'll be bad things, but ultimately it will balance out. And it's with the kind of ITAM for AI and FinOps for AI and the other way around, AI for ITAM and AI for FinOps. I do think
that's my videos in the next few weeks. I've done a video about ITAM for AI and AI for ITAM, and I promise I didn't even say that to you beforehand. That is
no,
just
no, not at all.
oh. I thought I was
There's
revolutionary, Rich, in thinking stuff like that. Apparently not.
there's I think it will come where it will settle down and you'll find actually managing AI in many ways is similar to managing SaaS or cloud, and there are things that AI will be able to help us with especially in terms of data analysis and that kind of thing. I'm still because there's a lot of talk about using AI for contracts management
Yes.
and things.
Yep.
I'm not sure about that. I think on paper it makes sense, but I think the technology needs to advance a little bit. I'm still skeptical that if you give it some of the software contracts, which then they're very long and verbose, and then it will say as referred to in this separate document or on this website.
Yeah.
I feel like if you just give that to AI, because it's a known thing that they generally lose interest in the middle of a long document. So the AI they pay attention to the beginning and the end, but stuff that's in the middle they often just miss or forget by the time they get to the end. So I wonder, and I'm sure there is a way of fixing that. And someone will build an ITAM contract specific LLM or something. But yeah, I think people that feel like they can just chuck the Microsoft EA through ChatGPT and it'll sort it all out for them. I think we're a little bit away from that at the moment.
No, Rich. The best thing I've got from this is, and I think that could be the tagline for this interview, is Rich Gibbons. AI is average. I think that's just all we. That's all we need for it.
Like that.
And yeah,
It'll be all right. So.
You're going to know that when AI does rise up and it isn't iRobot style, we will be perished. Yeah, that'll be the end of us. We will have insulted the overlords. But just quickly going back, before we start talking about AI, we're talking about all the price rises, the Microsoft licensing changes, cost avoidance and cash savings. What's your advice for ITAM, SAM, if some people are still calling it Ham and Sam, ITAM and software licensing professionals for optimizing and softening the blow, if you like, of these changes?
It's a good question. I think there's some of the things which are relatively traditional, old school stuff, just optimization in terms of how, are these licenses all assigned to active users? If you've got zombie users, if you've got that, that kind of thing, which you kind of feel, well, everyone's been doing that for years, so there's probably no opportunity.
Has everyone been doing that for years?
Well, that's the thing, if you've been doing it, you assume that everyone's been doing it, but in actual fact, they have not. So I think anyone, if you're relatively new to a company, don't assume that the person before you optimized everything perfectly. Do that work. You will find surprises. Similarly, on the server side, SQL Server sprawl is still a huge thing. But equally as well, looking at licenses that were bought for a specific project and just taking the time to find out, has that project been done? Is it actually still going to happen? Because so many, we need 50,000 licenses for this. 6 months later, someone goes, "Oh, we're not going to do that anymore." But no one comes back to procurement or SAM and says, "Oh yeah, next time, don't bother renewing those." So just things like that, which sometimes it feels, when there's all this AI stuff and consumption stuff, concentrating on things like that, feels maybe a little bit basic. but I think the foundational steps are always the most important. So doing that, looking, we've got, in the Microsoft example, we've got E5. Are people using those components? Can we do user profiling? Do some people need E5? Some people need F3 or whatever. So I think all relatively straightforward bits, but that tends to be where you get a lot of value. And then I think in the negotiation side as well, I spend a lot of time with people looking at where Microsoft are trying to go. What's a focus for Microsoft? Yeah. Is that a focus for you? If it is, this is how you can use it to your advantage. If it isn't, this is how you can try and defend against them making you buy X product. But yeah, I think that's relatively quick win stuff. But then I think going forwards, people will need to understand these new consumption metrics and billing models, and because otherwise, I'm saying to people, your next renewal will probably be pretty similar to your previous renewal in terms of metrics, license models, etc. But the one after that, I think will be quite different. Microsoft have pretty much given up on per core licensing, and they don't really care that much about the data center side. Per user licensing, they're getting pretty bored with that now. They want to move to these APIs and bots and agents and messages and So yeah, give you in 6 years, when you do your not your next renewal but the one after, it will mainly be that, I think. And yeah, if you've not got up to speed in time, it'll be yeah,
painful.
Yeah, and you won't really be able to add much value because Microsoft will say, right, you're going to need 40 million API calls, 1 trillion messages, and what are you going to base your response on? You're just going to kind of go, yeah, all right, and then. So I think kind of sticking with the future forward stuff is a big thing, and that will apply to all vendors. Microsoft, SAP, IBM, Salesforce, they're all doing a similar thing, and I'm aware that for me, keeping up to date with all the Microsoft stuff keeps me busy, and that's a large part of what I do. For people that have got proper jobs, and they're trying to manage the assets for a large organisation and keep up to date with Microsoft and Oracle and IBM. And I understand that it's much easier said than done, and that is where I think using third parties, when you need certain things, bring them in. I think that's where that model works really well, because there is so much change going on. It is impossible for everyone to keep up to date with everything.
But thank goodness you do, and post it on LinkedIn so that we do keep up to date with stuff. I think you mentioned with the current licensing models, you said it, you referenced it before, but with the increase in unit price, the decrease in the discount levels, still on the same kind of licensing metrics, cost avoidance is going to probably be the bigger win from an ITAM perspective. So I think the message there as well is, whilst clients, organisations want physical cash against budgets, that's not always going to be possible. Please don't get disheartened if you've got a huge amount of cost avoidance and no cash savings, or a tiny bit of cash savings, or you're spending more. Keep tracking that cost avoidance, because like Rich said, that's probably going to be more realistic for you with the decrease in budgets, increase in costs. And I think, unfortunately, with things like that, it's cost avoidance in the short term is probably going to be more king than cash savings.
Yeah, I think so, and I think internally, have that data. If you can show, look, this was our price in 2022, 2023. This is the list price now for all these different products. We negotiated this discount last time. This is what we got this time. So if you can kind of, prove that it wasn't just you not trying very hard, or if you can use the data to back it up, then hopefully that will go some way to help in your case, and potentially, depending on the size of your organisation, your execs will be talking to Microsoft's execs, and maybe they can use some of that to push back and say, look, I've spoken to my ITAM team, we've done everything we can, and we're still 15% more than last time. What are you going to do for us? And and maybe it's done at that level. But I think data is always important. So being able to back up why you're cost avoiding, not cost saving, I think is going to be useful.
Yeah, and I must admit, when you're a more mature ITAM function, which again, you find it's awesome going in when it's the first year and they've not done ITAM. There's so much cost avoidance, savings, all of that kind of stuff. But then when you get to year 2 or 3, year 2, there might still be some cleanup. When you start getting to like year 3 and 4, etc., and I hear this from people on LinkedIn, experienced it myself all the time, is you get to a point where you're so optimized, you've got your processes and controls in place that when it comes to the renewal and there's an increase in price, they're like, well, have you done your internal audit? You go, yes. And here's everyone that said they do need it. Here's all the usage reports to prove that they do. Here's what we've done in the previous years and managed to save. It's like, we're running lean now. Like literally, we run at our max. We do not buy licenses. Unless we absolutely need it. We reject, requests that come in with duff, business justification. Like, here's the evidence now. Unfortunately, we're at this point where we can't remove anymore. They need it. They're using it, and then that's almost in this current day and age. Again, it's that kind of that feedback from like the VPs, the SVPs, etc. Is on the one hand, it's like they're like, great. Again, I'm really pleased we've got these processes. We're automatically making sure that users that have the license assigned are using it, the consumption's there, all that kind of stuff. And then there's that tinge of disappointment when they've gone, I told the CIO that we'd save 15% on our software budget this year. And you're like, oh, I don't know why you would have done that, because we've been doing this for a long time now. You've had a lot of savings. They kind of almost get used to the savings every year, don't they? But that's just the climate and the environment that we're in at the moment with lack of money.
Yeah, and I think, again, internally, there's probably something in, once you know this information and you think, right, we're not going to be able to reduce like we did last time, getting that message out there, ahead of time, and kind of say, before the CIO tells the CEO, oh yeah, don't worry, 15%. If you can get out it early and say, look, because of reasons X, Y, and Z, we're not going to do that. I don't care, how much you shout, what you say, we can't do it. Then, budgets can maybe be built slightly differently, or expectations can be set. And I think, and then that kind of comes back to the bigger, ITAM's link into execs and C-level and things. Because if you have that link, it's easier to get ahead of stuff. But if you don't, and you tell someone that this is going to happen, but then it needs to go through 15 other people, and you hope they remember to tell that this has got up, then that becomes more difficult. But I think where possible, explaining to the executives that, look, we know the world of software. This is what's happening. These are the future trends. So don't just have last year minus 10 or whatever. It's going to have to be actually looked at. And I think with the consumption models, there's probably going to be a period where if you do need cash savings, if you're currently paying upfront for 20,000 licenses, if you can switch that and you drop that and you move to a pay-as-you-go model where you're paying, X amount per month, that will give you a kind of cash injection, but long term, you'll probably end up spending more money than you used to. But that's a whole different conversation, I think. But I think some of the publishers may well see that as an opportunity to say, look, your software budget's tight, switch to this model, and your spending this renewal goes from here down to here, and you think, oh, that looks amazing. You've got a bunch of money to spend on other stuff, probably AI products, but then when you come to your next renewal and they say, right, over the last 3 years, you've consumed this much, so now your new renewal is 3 times what it was previously. I think there's going to be a lot of that, and it's whether we can get execs to kind of to understand it and to see it from that perspective. There's lots of challenges, but there are, like you said earlier, lots of opportunities, and I think ITAM needs to have more of a business angle to it, and I think this is an opportunity for ITAM professionals to start talking to different stakeholders about more, rather than talking to them about software or licenses, talking to them about budgets and corporate plans and things, and expanding our reach a little bit. So there's the definite positives that can come out of this. It's always was it darkest before the dawn and all that kind of thing. It's it keeps us busy, and if you're willing to learn new things, upskill, there's lots and lots to do. With kind of FinOps coming into the world of SaaS, huge opportunity. And this is something that we say quite a lot at Syniega, that FinOps professionals do not want to learn all the licensing for all these vendors. And even if they do, it's going to take them years to do it. So there's a massive opportunity as FinOps come into the SaaS world and start looking at how they can apply, their existing methodologies and so on. They're going to need people who know Microsoft licensing, Oracle, IBM, etc., to support them. So I think some people initially think, FinOps are taking over, but actually it's a growth opportunity for SAM professionals, I think. Lots going on. Good things, bad things, but ultimately, I think it'll be positive. When virtualization came out, that was going to be the end of everything. As you said, at SaaS, that was going to be the end of everything. It all only ever leads to growth ultimately for the industry. So I'm feeling pretty positive about it altogether. I think it'll be interesting to see. If hopefully it won't take us 2.5 years to record another one of these, but but if it does, be interesting to see what the world looks like in what will that be, mid 2027?
Yeah. All right, Rich, it's a deal then, Rich. That's a nice way to end this. Rich, we'll see you back here in 2027 to see if all your premonitions have come true.
Awesome. It's a date.
If we haven't been sacrificed by iRobot because you can't pay our average.